Okay, let's get started. I'm Keith Gerard. For those people who don't know me, I'm the Berkshire Regional Director of the Massachusetts Small Business Development Center Network, and I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar. This webinar is the first of a series of live webinars that we will be conducting, so please stay tuned for future announcements and future opportunities for you to be involved. I'd like to do a quick shout out to our colleagues at our Southeast Regional Office who helped us announce this webinar, especially Ann Fenton, who for her bountiful assistance with this setup. I'd also like to, so thank you, Ann. I'd also like to do a big thank you to our own Jane Bellura. Thank you, Jane. During the presentation, everyone will be muted. If you have a question, please post them in the chat window and we will get to the questions after the presentation. So let's begin. I'm very happy, if you haven't met Mark already, I'm very happy to introduce Mark Avnet, a senior business advisor at the Berkshire Center, who is our featured presenter. Mark?
Thanks, Keith. Let me switch over to full screen here. As Keith said, my name is Mark Avnet. I'm a senior business advisor with the Massachusetts Small Business Development Center here in the Berkshire branch. Today, we're going to be talking about how to make sure you don't get hacked while you're working at home. First, I want to make sure we mention and thank our key strategic partners. We're powered by the U.S. Small Business Administration, the SBA, and we're a proud member of America's SBDC. We're supported by the Massachusetts Office of Business Development, and we're hosted by UMass Amherst Eisenberg School of Management. Couple of things. We've muted your microphone. Please keep it muted. First couple of days of quarantine, it was cute to hear dogs barking and phones ringing, but I think we're kind of tired of that now. No microphones. As Keith said, if you have questions, please type them into the chat window and we'll get to as many as possible after the presentation. We are recording this session, and if you don't want to have your video recorded, just turn off your Zoom camera now and you'll still be able to see us. We just won't be able to see you. As a reminder, the Berkshire office of the MSBDC provides free one-to-one comprehensive and confidential advising services in 3 areas. Business advising, that's business growth and planning, financing and loan assistance, management assistance, government contracting services through the Procurement Technical Assistance Center, which we affectionately know as PTAC, and export assistance through the Massachusetts Export Center. So, many of us and our employees are working mostly from home. Lots of things to like about that: better coffee, better snacks, the embarrassment of an occasional naked toddler walking across the video camera while you're on Zoom with your most important clients, managers, and customers. For some businesses, it's less expensive to have people working from home. And a lot of companies that were dead set against ever having work from home be acceptable are now looking ahead to changing their policies to accommodate work from home. Many of us may miss the social aspects of the office. I'm one of them, but overall it's not that bad a thing. However, it's not without dangers. Working from home exposes how poorly most of our home networks are secured and how sloppy our security hygiene really is. And bad people are taking advantage of it. You can see in these headlines that I grabbed recently. Cybercrime is booming and specifically targeting the weaknesses of home networks and computers. But I think this says it all. According to CNBC, the average cost of cyber attacks to small businesses is about $200,000, putting many at risk for going out of business. And working from home increases the risk of attack as hackers take advantage of how insecure most of our home networks and computers really are. In short, home security really does matter. So today we're going to be going over 7.5 things you can do to easily protect yourself and make it harder to be a cybersecurity victim while you're working from home. Most of these things, firewalls, virus detection, software updates, VPNs, backups, passwords, phishing, and hopefully especially common sense, these are things you've heard about, but according to security research, even people who know what to do often don't do these things. All right, let's move on. Number 1, firewalls. In real life, a firewall is literally a wall that separates something you want to protect from a fire. In the physical world, they're made of very dense fireproof materials: stone, bricks, concrete, steel, stuff that won't burn or even transmit too much heat. When you're working from home, the thing we want to protect is our data. That means we need something strong enough to keep bad guys out of our computers and off our networks. A firewall is a layer of security between your home network and the internet. By the way, you see the acronyms LAN and WAN here. LAN stands for Local Area Network, and it's all of the devices, computers, phones, Echo smart speakers, smart dishwashers, smart doorbells, smart security cameras, all the stuff we have in our house. WAN stands for Wide Area Network, and it's the rest of the world, the internet. The goal of a VPN is to protect your LAN from your WAN. You can and should enable firewalls in two different places. Your router, sometimes it's a cable modem, which is the main way that your internal network connects to the internet, usually through Wi-Fi. These are often provided by the company you got your internet from, one of the telcos, telecommunication companies, or cable companies. Your computer is another place, and especially laptops, since when you take them somewhere else, like a coffee shop or someone else's business or home, you can't assume there's a firewall on their network, so it's better to take yours with you. Most routers ship with a firewall enabled, but they may have a couple of features disabled. If you have access to the built-in settings, you should change the default router password to keep anyone else from easily logging in. It's probably something like admin or fast bunny, and it's exactly the same on every one of those routers. So if I have one on mine and you haven't changed yours, I can get into yours using the same password. Change it to something you can remember that no one else will guess. We're going to talk about passwords in a few minutes. Then change the Wi-Fi name and password. The name is what's going to show in available Wi-Fi networks on your phone or on your computer, and the password can be anything you can remember and don't mind sharing with guests. Another point there though is change the Wi-Fi password regularly, and that keeps people from logging in when they're no longer your guests, say from a car parked outside your house. Very important to change things often. Setting up a firewall on your computer is amazingly easy. If you're running Windows, just make sure to enable the built-in Windows Defender firewall. You open the control panel and just turn it on. If you've got a Mac, you go to System Preferences, select Security and Privacy, and then the Firewall tab, and turn that on. Really simple, and it's immediate protection. Number two, viruses. We've all seen far too much of this one lately, unfortunately probably in the future as well. Biological viruses are tiny strands of protein that invade living cells. They hijack the cell to take it over and then start reproducing like crazy. Their goal is to spread. We suffer as a result as our bodies try to react and neutralize the virus. Computer viruses are actually very similar, which is why they use the name. They're short bits of code that invade a working computer and take it over. They're designed to spread, which may be enough to stop your computer or phone from working as it runs overtime trying to replicate. But they also often have other goals: to steal your passwords, to steal data, to send email to your contacts, continuing to spread the virus to other machines, other people, to track which keys you're hitting on the keyboard or that you're texting in. One of the most talked about security issues recently is ransomware, where hackers install software on your computer that encrypts all your data. Your hard drive is unusable without decryption in that case, and it takes you hostage, takes the computer and the data hostage until you pay them, which is how kidnappers work. But also, just like real kidnappers, sometimes they don't release the victim. They don't release your computer. It's better to stop them before they stop you. Antivirus software is the first thing and probably the best thing you can do to prevent that. You may have heard the terms worms, Trojan horses. Worms, Trojan horses, and ransomware and viruses are related types of code called malware, evil software. Right? And antivirus software can help quite a bit. Fortunately, there are a zillion antivirus apps that you can install. On Windows, the easiest thing you can do is to use the built-in Windows Defender program. Search for Windows Security in the taskbar, click on Virus and Threat Protection, enable the built-in scanner. Make sure to update the virus definitions. Those are the information, that's the information that the computer needs in order to recognize a virus. It's kind of like antibodies in the body. Then run a scan. The first time you run the scan, it can take quite a while because it's running through every file on your computer. After that, it just looks for the ones that have changed. Apple Macintoshes, unfortunately, don't have a built-in program. There is a myth that Macs don't get viruses. It is not true. So you need a third-party program of some kind. Macworld.com is a pretty good source for comparisons. And they have recommendations for the best paid and also the best free antivirus programs. And the free ones are pretty good. These only work, however, on Macs or Windows or your phones if you keep them up to date and run the application. You gotta keep them up to date and run the application. And speaking of keeping things up to date, number 3, keep your software up to date. Windows, Mac, Android, iPhones, they're always coming up with what we hope are less buggy and definitely more secure operating systems and applications. Each of the apps that you've installed, I've got, I don't know, 200, maybe 300 apps installed on my computer and on my phone, of which I use 4. The companies that make those are always trying to make their software more reliable and more secure. But you need to install the updates to get any benefit. You'll generally be alerted to new updates on the device itself. Don't ignore them. And check with the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store to make sure that you're keeping up to date with your installed apps on your phones. You can set all the updates to install automatically, which is generally a good idea with one exception. For major operating system updates, you got to do some research first. Sometimes they change the way your computer or phone actually operates. You need to make an informed decision if that's right for you. So do some research before the big updates. Keep all your apps updated all the time though, and if there's a security update, run that. Number 4, a virtual private network, or VPN, is essentially a secure tunnel through the internet, and it lets you use the internet more securely and privately. It works by encrypting the data that you're sending out to the internet and that's returning to you. So it's unreadable to anybody who's not on the VPN. And it masks your computer's location and IP address, Internet Protocol address. That's a unique identifier for your computer or device on the internet. And that keeps other people from using that information. Some companies require that anyone connecting from off campus or outside the building even must use a VPN with specific credentials in order to connect it all. And that's actually a really good idea. If you have the chance to set that up for your company, you definitely should. VPNs are not built into computers or phones. You can think of them like a service that you subscribe to, but they can all connect to a VPN that you subscribe to. Experts generally suggest avoiding free VPNs. They tend to be a little bit slow, and security sometimes is an issue. Remember, this is all your data going through there. Paid VPNs range in price, number of connection points, how easy it is to get to them, and speed. Because they encrypt your data, VPNs tend to slow your internet connection just a little bit. The trade-off, though, is that you get the benefit of really secure connections. A quick Google search for Best VPN Service 2020 will give you a host of recommendations. But also check out CNET, PCMag, TechRadar, and Tom's Guide. They're generally considered reliable sources of information. Once you select one, follow the instructions from that company on connecting your computers and phones. Number 5, backups. I'm not sure if it's happened to you yet, and it is yet because it's gonna happen. But it is a horrible, terrible feeling to lose your data. Not just the document you're working on, the letter or the email or the flyer you're working on, but everything. And more than a horrible feeling, when that hard drive crashes or someone steals your computer after you left it at the coffee shop just to run into the bathroom for a second and you come back out and it's gone, or literally if you see smoke coming out of the computer, that's happened to me. You may have lost all your financial information, your tax data, your contacts, your emails, your entire business can go up in smoke. Backing up your data early and often can make the difference between your business's life and death and whether you can sleep at night. There are 2 main types of backup. There's local to a different hard drive and cloud-based to a data farm somewhere out on the internet. The easiest way to back up is to attach an additional external hard drive like this to your computer and use the built-in backup software that's included with Windows and Apple computers. The computer duplicates its data on a schedule to the drive, usually just from your documents folder. Maybe it'll back up your photos too. And if anything happens to the main computer, you have a drive with at least those files on it that can be used immediately on a different machine. Once you make your first complete backup, which can actually take several hours, it's backing up every file on your computer. Additional backups after that are incremental. It only backs up the things that have changed. So those may only take a couple of minutes. Additionally, you may choose to clone your drive to a second external hard drive. A clone is a complete backup that includes every bit on your hard drive, your operating system, applications, everything. And what it does is it gives you the ability to put that drive in a different machine and boot from there. It's as though you had your original computer still working. The benefits of doing local backups are it's really easy to do. You connect it, you use the built-in software. It's inexpensive. Even really large external hard drives now are $50 to $100, and your data is priceless. It's easy to make multiple copies, get a second drive, connect it, there you go. And it's easy to manage restoring because you have the drive right here, you connect it with a wire to your computer, you find the files and transfer them in. It's very quick. Things to be aware of though, you have to remember to connect the backup drive. And if you set the schedule to run at night, which is what I do, I think it's not a bad idea. And if you turn the computer off, closing the screen to go to bed, there may not be a backup that night. A really important tip though is to move the backup drive to a separate location when your backup is done. Anything that takes out your computer, the coffee you accidentally pour into it, if it splashes on your hard drive too, you've lost your original computer and the hard drive. You want to avoid that by disconnecting the hard drive and storing it out of the room, but then remember to connect it again when you want to back up. Your other backup option is to back up to the internet, to a cloud service. These are large storage farms that allow you to back up your computer files to their hard drives. They then encrypt and back up their files to another facility. So it's a secure way to make sure you've got a copy if you need it. They don't lose your data. You can think of them a little like Dropbox, but instead of syncing your files, if you change the spacing on something, it immediately changes it on Dropbox. They only store what you put there. The benefits of cloud storage, cloud backup, it's very easy to set up. You just subscribe and use the backup software that comes with a subscription. They're offered by companies like Google and Microsoft and Apple. Carbonite and Acronis are two other names that come up a lot. It's very easy to manage backing up. Again, you just use their software and it does it. A lot of them also offer backup of phones. So my phone is backed up to Google throughout the day. And it's because there are redundant data sites, it's pretty much disaster-proof backup. You got to be aware of a few things. Prices can range from a couple of dollars a year to hundreds of dollars a year, depending on your storage needs and encryption requirements, things like that. The initial backup can take days and days. I think my first backup took over a week. And the reason that that's true is that although you may have a very fast connection, I've got a gigabit internet connection in my house, it's a gig coming down, but going up, it's throttled quite a bit. So going upstream, I have 30 meg on a good day, which means something that came down in a few minutes might take hours to back up going the other direction. Your computer needs to be turned on and on the internet. Your internet connection needs to be on in order for backups to happen because it's going out to the internet. It can be slow to recover data because, again, you're downloading it through the internet, depending on your internet speed. That can take quite a while. All of this begs a question of which one of these two should you pick? And the answer is pretty simple, both of them. You can't have too many backups. You need your data backed up. As a smarter than I used to be veteran of far too many computer crashes, my backup scheme is an hourly incremental onto a local drive, a nightly clone to a different drive, a weekly clone to a third drive. Additionally, all my files are kept current on Dropbox, Microsoft OneDrive, and Google Drive, and sometimes I'll just print something out and stick it in a file cabinet. Yeah, it's maybe a little crazy. On the other hand, when I was working on this presentation, I actually had to recover my drive. I had installed a new bit of software. The install went wrong and totally borked my hard drive. It took a while to restore all the data, but I had it in a number of places. So I lost nothing. Again, I've learned from experience, and I hope you never have to. Back up your data. Passwords. If you see your password on this list, you probably should not be in charge of setting passwords. Admin, don't ever use that. That's the first thing people try. And the second thing they try, password, because a lot of people don't, no one will ever guess that my password is password. Yes, we will. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you would have used this on your luggage lock, it's not a good password. We use passwords to prove who we are. And then we use that proof to access apps, sites, computers, data, voicemails, bank and financial information, and mission critical business data. Choosing a good password that's secure and also one you can remember can be a challenge. It's never a good idea to make it too easy. And because of that, you do not want to use your high school's name, because I can find out who you are and see where you went to high school. Your first pet's name, your favorite movie, your favorite musician or band, your stripper name. I looked up mine, it's Harry Sex Machine, who knows? Your graduation or birth year, your favorite sport, really anything that might show up on a Facebook quiz. And in fact, those Facebook quizzes are very often posted by people who are trying to figure out your password. Don't make it easy for them. Really, you should not play those games. But certainly don't use the answers that you would have used as a password. America's SBDC suggests that a strong password should be at least 12 characters long, mixing numbers, symbols, capital and lowercase letters. Never reuse them, don't share them where they can be copied or overheard. This is really good advice, actually. But that's a lot of characters. How am I going to remember this password if it's hard? Well, the Department of Homeland Security suggests this, that instead of using a password that you might have used in the past, like in this case, hoops, use ILTPBB for I like to play basketball. And then you swap out some upper and lowercase characters, add some punctuation, and you end up with something that's not really pronounceable, but you can remember it. So I tried this myself. This is actually a password that I can remember. Actually, it's not. I can't remember this password, but I know how to build it. I know how to build it easily. So the first thing you do is you pick a sentence that you can remember. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. And then swap some of the letters for numbers, capitalize something, add some punctuation, and then use the first character of each of the words. So you can see here, I took the first letter, the capital I, and it became an exclamation point. That made the first full word the next word, so I capitalized W. TB, I swapped the 0 for the O in of, and I ended up with this. Now, the question mark is easy for me to remember because this is kind of a funky sentence. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. How can it be both? All right. So I know I can build this easily. That sentence is pretty well known. So think of something else that isn't as well known. Maybe it's your mom's or your uncle's favorite saying, or something you say as a family that's a little weird, a little unique to your family. Use something you'll remember, but will be hard for someone else to guess. And then swap characters and numbers. Always a good idea. Enable two-factor verification. That's where you need to confirm by text or phone, or an app running on the phone, or sometimes on your computer, that it was really you who just tried to sign in. It can be a pain because you got to do it every time, but it's really secure. And even if somebody steals your computer from the coffee shop or somehow finds out your password, they can't get through unless you let them. It's really important to, it's just really important if you let your browser remember your login and password for you, which is generally not a good idea, but we all do it. The other tip here, don't let your browser remember your login and password for financial sites, for your banks, for whoever manages your stock portfolio. Come up with a hard password that you'll remember and use that instead. You want to be able to control who has access to your data. Two-factor verification is a really good way of doing that. Number 7, phishing. Phishing is a technique used to fool you into providing what should be secret information to people who want to use that information to exploit you. And we've all gotten those emails asking us to confirm your information by 4 p.m. or your account will be closed or something like that. Recently, we're all getting these EIDL and PPP confirmations and attempts to get our information. We need you to confirm your social security number for your PPP application. Wait a second, I don't remember applying for that, but I don't want to lose the money, so I better answer. Phishing attempts are becoming more and more common, and they're getting harder to tell apart from the real thing. In fact, Google reported 17 million phishing emails related to COVID-19 each day during 1 week in April. This is really serious, guys. According to America's SBDC, it works like this. You get an email or a text. It seems to be from someone you know, and it asks you to click a link or give your password or business bank account information, other sensitive information. They want you to confirm things, and it looks real. It's easy to spoof a logo, make up fake email addresses. You'll often get email from a familiar company or somebody pretending to be somebody that you know. In fact, one of our clients recently got a federal stimulus debit card. That's how they're distributing the money lately. That looked real, but asked that our client confirm information. We helped them identify that it was a phishing attempt and it was a fake card. Looked really good though. If you're not sure, check it out. We may be able to help you as well. Generally, there's some sense of urgency on these things. Act now or something bad will happen. If you don't confirm your Bank of America login account immediately by 4 o'clock today, we will close it. I've actually gotten things telling me that my Social Security account would be closed if I didn't confirm my information by 3 o'clock today. It's not something that is possible. What happens when you click the link, it opens the door for people to install software, generally password trackers or ransomware. And if you share passwords, scammers will have access to those accounts. To protect yourself, a couple of easy steps. Think before you click. Does it even make sense? Does it make sense that my best friend from 4th grade, Eric, wrote me out of the blue to ask, I was thinking about your mom and I wanted to remember her name. What's her name again? That doesn't make any sense. I've gotten notices from Bank of America asking me to confirm my banking information, and it looks real. And you want to fix it fast, except I don't have an account at Bank of America. You can look for spelling mistakes and typos. Real organizations tend to proofread. There's a low chance that there'll be spelling mistakes and typos. Something else you can do, you can hover your mouse over the link they want you to click, and you may see where it actually links to. Here's an example. I got this on Monday, and it looks reasonably okay at first glance. My junk mail filter caught this, and good, but I do this for a living. I'm kind of smart. Sometimes I know better than that stupid filter, right? But then you look a little more closely and you can see why it trapped it. The return address says it's from service customer. Well, customer service maybe. And then the actual email address has nothing at all to do with PayPal. Second thing, I live in the US. We spell center C-E-N-T-E-R, not C-E-N-T-R-E. That's how it's spelled in Europe. Customers needs an apostrophe there. It's missing. It's a typo or a grammatical error that is unlikely to really have come from PayPal. And hovering over the link that they want me to click, I can see the real address, which is a Spanish domain, .es. It's definitely not PayPal. So it looks pretty good, but nothing about it is correct. To protect yourself, what you can do is to then type the company's real web address, real URL, paypal.com, into a browser and log in the normal way, not by clicking on the link. If the email is real and it's important, there's likely to be a message for you there. You can also call the company, vendor, best friend from 4th grade, and see if they know anything about it. Did you send me this thing? And if the answer is yes, then you can talk about it. If I call my friend Eric from 4th grade and he says, I don't know, what the hell's that about? I can maybe have a great conversation with him. We can catch up on the last million years. The thing is, it's just too easy to just click. Take a moment, think it through before you do it. In other words, the 7.5 tip, use common sense. Don't share confidential information on social networks. It is not private. They are social networks because your social graph can all see what's going on there. Just not a good idea. Don't even give hints about your passwords on there. Make sure unauthorized people can't access your computer physically. That includes children and pets. A pet randomly hitting keys, your cat walking across the keyboard, can lock you out of systems, or especially if it's happened while you're changing passwords, it can enter a new password that's basically paw prints. Kids playing games on your computers may have access to information they shouldn't. Generally, it's a good idea to lock your business computer up when you're not using it. Stick it in a drawer with a key Leave it on if you need to connect to the internet during that time. Never say, it's 11:30 at night, I'll back this up tomorrow, because that's when things crash. Just back it up. Have a system that makes it automatic. Then you don't even have to think about it. It's just backing up all the time. Leaving home for a day? Great time to turn off your router. If you don't need the internet, turn it off. The most secure server, the most secure computer, the most secure phone is one that's turned off, because there's no way to get information out of it. Now, especially that we can travel again, if you're going somewhere for a couple of days and no one's going to be home and you don't need the system on, just turn off the router. It's a good idea to restart them every now and then anyway. They just get happy. But turn it off if you're not going to use it. This happened to my dad. He got a phone call, somebody saying, I'm calling from Microsoft to tell you that our data shows that you've been hacked. Oh, that's terrible. What do you need? What do I need to do? And they said, oh, we need your login and password for the following places. Well, they weren't calling from Microsoft, because Microsoft doesn't do this. They can't even tell if you've been hacked. However, the second he gave them his information, he was officially hacked. They installed a whole bunch of stuff on his computer. He was smart enough not to keep financial information on there. But it took me almost 2 weeks to undo the damage they did in minutes once they had access to his computer. Loose lips sink ships. That's a World War II thing. If you don't tell the enemy where our boats are, they can't bomb them, right? Don't tell anyone your passwords ever, 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 ever. I'll go back to my dad again. In a restaurant, we were talking about security and computers, and he said, you know what? No one's going to guess my passwords. It's herrings. That's my password with a capital H. No one will ever guess it, because they don't know how much I love herring, except everybody at that Chinese restaurant now knew that his password for everything was herrings. I went home after the meal. We changed all his passwords. Don't tell people your passwords. That's how you become you on the internet, right? If you have the password, it's proof that it's you. Make them hard. Don't share them. In short, think before you click on stuff. Think before you talk too much. Think before you post. Okay, we've covered a lot of stuff today. And even if you knew all of these things about firewalls and virus detection and software updates and VPNs and backups and passwords and phishing and using your brain, are you doing all these things? You don't want to necessarily do all of these right at once, but you gotta try to do all of them at some point and get them all installed on your computers. They're easy to do. It's worth doing it. If you want some additional resources, these are good places to go. We'll paste these into the chat window and also send them in the follow-up email. But these are reliable places for good information. That's what we got for today. I hope you learned a few easy tricks to make your home network secure enough to protect you, your family, and your business. We'll be sending off a copy of the deck to all the people who registered. And if you want to talk, just reach out to me at this email address and I'll get right back to you. Let's take a look at some of the questions. And if you want to stick around to chat after that, let's do it. Keith, what do we have?
Yeah, great, Mark. Thank you very much for that very informative presentation. If people want to stick around, we do have a few questions that were submitted, and I'd like to post them to Mark and give him the opportunity to respond. Certainly afterwards, if you think of questions, you can email him or me or whatever, and we'll get the answers to you. So the first question is, Mark, is, everyone is pressed for time, but yet they're really concerned about their safety of their computers and their home systems and things. So out of all those things, what would you recommend is the top 1 or 2 things that people could do today to stay?
All of them. Do them all. But the fastest ones to put in place are probably firewalls. Just go to your control panels on Windows or Mac, flip the switch. It takes 30 seconds. The second thing I'd do is get some antivirus software. These things are getting smarter and smarter. In Windows, just turn on Windows Defender. Again, takes about 30 seconds, maybe. On a Mac, you're going to have to do a little research because there's no built-in antivirus software. So do some research, download the app, install it. Maybe that'll take 30 minutes if you're very careful thinking about it. And then for either one of them, run the update the definitions and then run the scans. That can take some time. You can do it overnight. Set it to automatically do the scans. But those are two things you could do very quickly. And then, because now you've saved so much time, do the rest of the things we talked about over the next week. Having a great lock on the front door, really good idea. But not if you leave your windows unlocked, right? So you need to protect yourself as much as possible. So I would, firewalls, antivirus.
Great, thanks, Mark. We have a question from Anne. You talked about the cloud. Can you talk a little bit more about that and exactly where, if I send my data to the cloud, where does it go, and how do I retrieve it?
It goes directly to the Chinese.
Yeah.
Sorry. The cloud is a way of describing everything on the internet. It is not a location, but when you talk about a cloud service, what you're talking about is a data farm, basically a large building with a whole lot of computers and hard drives in it, run by a company like Google or Microsoft or Amazon, Apple. And what you do is you upload your information to it. So if you're buying from Google and you store your information on the Google servers and hard drives, they then clone it to a whole mess of other places so that it's up there, it's encrypted, no one else can read it. So the cloud is a generic term for all of the places like that there are on the internet.
Okay,
and
great.
To get the information back down, you use whatever, if you use whatever Google app there is, or Apple app or Microsoft app there is that allows you access to that stuff.
Great. All right, Evan, I have another question. You talked about Macs, computers, and you talked about iPads and everything. I have a question here about an iPhone. Is an iPhone protected automatically, or is it in the same kind of situation as the computers?
If you get a stock Apple iPhone, and never do anything different with it, if you only install apps from the official App Store and you keep iOS up to date, it's unlikely but not impossible that your iPhone or iPad will be infected by a virus. However, a lot of people jailbreak their phones. If you don't know what the word means, it means that you aren't doing it, so that's okay. But it's a way of getting control over the phone that otherwise Apple would have a lot of control over. People like Apple because it's a closed system and nothing bad can get into it, although it can, versus Android, which a lot of people can get into. Viruses are not the only kind of malware there is. There are certain images that if you take a picture of this or see it in a web browser, it'll actually crash your phone, or it will automatically install software. There are lots of very fancy kinds of malware that are being brought out every day. Apple and all the other phone manufacturers and operating system manufacturers send out regular security updates to try to secure your phone. I think it's always better to be prepared by keeping up to date with all your updates, especially security updates. I don't have an iPhone, but if I did, I would put an antivirus app on there.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mark. I have another question about, and I don't know if I get the pronunciation of this right. Can I use Windows Defenders with Sophos? Sophos?
No, it's a Windows device, and Microsoft had a couple of aborted attempts at having a phone. They no longer do. There are both for phones, pads, tablets. There's antivirus software you can download for all of those things. You can use VPN. You can set them all up to work with VPNs easily. If you use Acronis's VPN, then you can use the Acronis app to manage it on your phone. And those work across all the different platforms.
Okay, great. I want to be mindful of the time here. I appreciate everyone spending time here. I have one final question. You talked about backup, and I have a question here about, like, how often should I do backup? You may have addressed it, but I think this question comes back again, I think.
I'm just looking. My computer is just finishing a backup. Do it all the time. Do it constantly. Make as many backups as you possibly can. Do it later today. Do one tonight. Do one tomorrow morning. Lather, rinse, repeat. You cannot have too many backups. If you set it up with the cloud, if you set it up with a local drive, those things tend to run automatically, so they'll continue to do it. You don't have to back up. As long as you don't mind going back on those vacation pictures, to retake those vacation pictures from 30 years ago, especially now that we're not allowed to travel anywhere. If you don't mind losing those, don't back up. If you don't mind starting your business over again, don't bother backing up. If you don't mind, I'll take all that back. Back up, do it a lot. You can't have too many backups.
Okay, well, thank you, Mark. Thank you very much for your presentation and all.
I'm passionate about that.
Yes, and it's great information. This ends our question and answer portion. I want to thank everyone for attending, and hopefully they have learned. I know I have learned a few tips how to keep themselves and their network safe. So for follow-up, Mark, do you have anything for us? Any follow-up?
Yeah, we'll send a follow-up email to everybody who was here. With some additional information and some contact information. We'd love to hear from you. And if you have any questions, just shoot them to us. Thank you, everybody, and have a great rest of your day.
Great. And again, thank you, everybody, for your attendance today. And until next time, be prosperous.